Good afternoon and welcome everyone to today's session on Bridging the Gap, Digitalizing Aging Equipment with Senseye Predictive Maintenance. We'll get going in a second, but before we start, I'd like to cover some basic housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded and will be made available via a link in the follow-up email that will be sent to everyone after the session. The session will run around 45 minutes, but it will only be better with your active participation. So please submit any questions you have throughout the presentation in the question box that's in the upper right-hand corner of your viewing screen. We'll be monitoring the question box at all time, and at the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A portion. And finally, a reminder that you will be in listen-only mode during the entire presentation. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and give it to our presenters today, Kelly Case and Liz McGinn. Liz, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Obviously, my name is Liz McGinn. I work in marketing at Senseye Predictive Maintenance, and I'll be presenting here with Kelly. Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kelly Case, and I am part of the Senseye business development team for about 2 years now. I have past experience working with customers on really that digitalization path and transformation, both when it comes to working with things like real-time data, but also with maintenance departments and how you transform and modernize your maintenance practices.
Perfect. I mean, as industries kind of grow, as our topic here of bridging the gap with digitalization with aging equipment, there's obviously a lot of challenges that come with that, as in like rising maintenance costs, obviously the manual processes that are prone to, errors or human errors specifically. And then obviously the need for digitalization has become more relevant as time goes on. Over the next, 45 minutes, we'll discuss why digitalization matters and the common challenges and kind of how Senseye Predictive Maintenance can provide solutions for you. So starting off, we'll start with our first poll. What does digitalization mean to you? And as you're answering this question, we'll kind of go into some challenges that we face. Obviously, there's as I mentioned, the aging equipment is obviously very important as you continue on this digitalization journey, and the expenses of keeping that equipment working versus replacing all of it. There's also a lot of companies using manual processes that you can make those human errors. What are some other challenges, Kelly?
From a maintenance perspective and production, how do you go about maintaining the equipment, avoiding unplanned downtime, but really also having your equipment function in the best way possible? If you have a poor performing piece of equipment, it can be overheating materials, it can be under capacity, consuming too much energy, which costs your company money. Also, as you get into that legacy equipment, they become more difficult and more expensive to maintain. The availability of spare parts, getting the right firmware, software updates that are maybe no longer supported by the company, all become more complicated. And if you have an unplanned downtime, can significantly impact production. Many companies are looking to be able to reduce the risk and operating costs. So how can you start moving towards cost savings versus cost avoidance? And reducing risk is, the fewer times that an employee has to get up on a lift or something along those lines, the safer the operating environment is. Also, the fewer times you have to open up a piece of equipment simply reduces the risks to your maintenance teams. We also are finding that there is the convergence of the OT and IT network. There's a wealth of data available in the OT network. So that's your real-time data and many other aspects that is valuable information that can be shared with people outside of the OT network. So how do you deal with security and being able to make that data digitalized? Gotta love that word. And how do you make it available outside of kind of the people in the OT network? And then the final one is improving ROI. So many companies are looking ways to optimize their processes, to improve efficiency, efficiencies, to maintain or increase capacity, and how do you do that in an economically sound manner for your organization?
That completely makes sense. Obviously, everyone's trying to avoid the risks of, that unplanned downtime, and saving money is very important in today's day and age. So we'll go into the poll answers. It looks like retrofitting legacy equipment with new technology to create smarter machines is kind of the overarching theme that everyone seems to agree on for digitalization. For us here at Siemens, digitalization kind of leans into more broader than that. So we start kind of with digitalizing the information that you have. So again, as we mentioned a little bit, that manual analyses, or even the paperwork, a lot of people can do manual portions of that. And then taking all of that information, putting it into a technology or some type of software-based program. And then with that, we can turn that into a digital twin. So using that, digital portion of it to kind of see what it looks like from a broader point of view, or into a safe space. If you wanted to make changes before making changes in the real world, you can really adapt your digital twin instead of, your actual plant floor. And then from that, you learn different insights that you then can implement into the real world, versus trying to, again, affect all of that before actually knowing the thing. And that obviously turns into kind of this loop of information. So you just keep building and building from that. Here we'll lead into the second poll. What is your biggest obstacle to digitalization? Kelly, why is it important for us to digitalize?
It really helps companies remain competitive, remain innovative in the marketplace, of being able to get the new products out to the marketplace, addressing cultural shifts and product desires and competitiveness in the marketplace. Digitalization also helps companies make data-driven insights, of being able to turn data into intelligence, that the decisions that you're making are powered by data and are valid and shareable across the organization. It really connects from a holistic perspective. It helps you understand that if I make a change in this location of the plant, how does it impact another? Simple things like, turning a manual process into an automated process can really save your employees time, money, accuracy. It can even do simple things like no longer having to have a file cabinet full of data sheets that are handwritten. Simple things like that can help from the digitalization. And a very big one is capturing knowledge. You have employees within your organization that have been there for years. From a maintenance perspective, they have incredible knowledge of how the process works, how the equipment work. And when that individual leaves or retires, that wealth of information may exit with them. And so how do you capture that information to then make it available to things like generative AI that then can add context and deliver it back to your employees with context, making it a very valuable resource for other employees to understand and how to improve. And then automating, again, can really help improve efficiency and effectiveness of your employees. So if you go from taking a manual 2-hour route of taking vibration samples in your production environment, that person then correlates that information and does the analysis. That's a good deal of time. While you may get insight from it, it's time consuming from an efficiency perspective. So if you can automate that, you give that time back to that employee to then go and do something else that can bring the company value and improve processes in conjunction with it.
That's wonderful. I think it's really important to be able to share your not share, sorry, save that time. I think that's a big thing that a lot of companies kind of lack is that time portion of it. So by digitalizing, it makes the easier for them to save time and kind of be productive elsewhere.
And that really helps kind of shift the mindset, at least from a maintenance perspective, of cost avoidance to cost savings, of being able to give time back to your employees to do other tasks, hopefully get rid of the situations where you're firefighting all of the time that can cause, its own set of issues when you're fighting fires versus being proactive in your job functions.
Completely makes sense. So I guess, can we see our results from our poll? It looks like one of the biggest obstacles to digitalization is that it's too expensive. What do you have to say about that, Kelly?
So I see a couple different ones that stand out to me. So too expensive, really, you start small, you use what you have available. Oftentimes customers don't necessarily realize the wealth of information that they already have in PLCs and within their equipment. So being able to take initial approaches and really take that phased approach. From a predictive maintenance perspective, using as much of the data that already exists helps you get started. It also, if you do a phased approach, helps you address that big cultural shift and really starting to embrace moving from maybe previous practices of running equipment to failure, for example, to making that shift into understanding that your assets are valuable, of course, but taking care of preventing issues and then being able to predict and have the time available to go perform maintenance in that organized, effective way becomes much healthier. And when you take a phased approach, so oftentimes we have seen customers where if they try too big, too strong, it takes time. Your employees start to lose interest because they aren't seeing the successes that were promised in the scoping or sales phase of it. So having that phased approach allows you to get things up and running quicker. It allows you to start seeing success that breeds success, and you can build it, you can promote it, you can get more people interested in it. And it helps you with that learning of new technology, where you take a core set of people that maybe like new technology. You have a plant that is the lighthouse that, you use as the adopter of new technology, that then you can leverage that and build off of to then make it scalable across more parts of your organization, more plants, just depending on your organization.
Yeah, as we've been kind of chatting when we were developing this webinar, we kind of joked about like, how do you eat an elephant? And it's one bite at a time and kind of getting started with the smaller portions of it versus jumping in to kind of tackle the whole thing. So I think it's very important to make sure you kind of start small, and that proves that digitalization helps. So even converting from that manual to an Excel sheet to kind of track your data so you can kind of pull those in, I think that's really important.
Definitely. People like to understand the value that these changes bring to them in their daily life and their job functions and their responsibility. And so being able to kind of start small to prove out that value then allows you to take those wins and move to a bigger audience.
Completely. So kind of, I guess, what are the first steps into digitalization?
So from our approach that we take, we sit down with our customers to really understand what assets would we be monitoring and what data is currently available. You don't have to have 500 data points for a pump, for example, to be able to get started from a predictive maintenance perspective. So it's let's take a look at what data that you currently have. Are there gaps that might be there, that we really need this type of data for this type of asset. And then do we just need to add an aftermarket sensor, for example? So that's really the getting the data available, getting it connected, addressing those gaps that might be there, and then really starting on that small scale perspective. Let's start with one facility and look at high value assets that will allow us to get that ROI and those success cases started, within the weeks and months versus months to years and longer.
Perfect. That sounds great. And we recommend here at Senseye Predictive Maintenance is obviously getting started with predictive maintenance. Kelly, can you explain a little bit about what is predictive maintenance?
So within the maintenance world and kind of the programs that are available, you have some organizations in the past that have run to failure, for example, who then decided that that's not working for them. So they get into the preventative maintenance where they're looking at OEM recommendations. They're consistently performing the PMs. Their people are gathering information about the work that's done. And then starting to move into things like condition-based maintenance, condition monitoring, where you're actually starting to look at the behavior of the equipment and doing maintenance according to those conditions. Predictive maintenance really takes it to the next level. It's where you start using AI, machine learning. Senseye now uses generative AI to do the analytics for your team. It goes through, and our whole goal is to predict condition degradations or changes from normal operating conditions with really days or weeks or more advance notice that allows you to minimize disruptions. It allows you to effectively plan when, how, why, who is going to perform the maintenance. It allows you to look at production schedules, your inventory of spare parts to have that proactive maintenance strategy. And Senseye allows you to do it at scale across thousands of machines.
Perfect. As you mentioned a little bit, we kind of go into some of our other outcomes of predictive maintenance.
Definitely. It's really that maintenance ahead of time. So, for example, if you know that you have a PM scheduled in 2 days or your next scheduled plant turnaround is over the next weekend, what can you do for this piece of equipment to maintain it, live until you get that to that already scheduled downtime? It's also that precise and correct. Your maintenance team knows which assets are in most need of either urgent, recent, or upcoming maintenance that allows you to be more precise in the maintenance scheduling that you do, correlating that with your scheduling, your employees' availability with the right skill set, that inventory of spare parts. It also allows you those data-driven insights. Are the PM schedules that you have for your equipment actually correct? Can you go from every 3 months for an oil change to every 4 months? That's that cost reduction. That's the cost savings for organizations with a multitude of benefits from that perspective. And then with Senseye, really that capturing of knowledge and the ability to say this asset has been worked on these previous times. The data is telling us that the behavior of the equipment matches what previously happened. And this is the starting point for your maintenance team. So capturing that information, internalizing it within Senseye, making it available to the generative AI, and then allowing your users to ask the system questions and really using that knowledge as much as possible. And then the last aspect is really sustainability. There's the environmental aspect where if your equipment is performing well, then it has better energy consumption, for example. But it's also financial stability over time. Because if you're using your employees in the most efficient manner, that's financially viable for your company. But also that inventory of spare parts. Do you have the right parts based on the actual consumption that's needed, or are you just putting spare parts on the shelf because you think you might need it, in an unplanned downtime situation?
I think it's also important to note that increased sustainability is also part of, expanding your line's lifetime. So making sure that it lasts a lot longer. If you know when it needs maintenance, then you're not preemptively doing maintenance that it doesn't necessarily need, but you also know when it does need it, so it can expand that lifetime versus, getting broken down on the side of the road with your car, for an analogy of that oil change, but that kind of portion of it as well.
And very true. If you can go in and change a bearing ahead of time instead of wait for a failure, oftentimes more expensive results of a breakdown can be the secondary damage that happens. And so the fix of it becomes more complicated, more time consuming and more expensive. So catching those things with advance notice and being able to avoid it altogether just increases the health of your assets over time.
Completely. Right part, right people, right time. It's kind of our little bit of our motto there. And then kind of going into the, Senseye Predictive Maintenance. Exactly. I know you mentioned it a little bit, but do you want to go into a bit more detail?
Here's a kind of a general dashboard. Senseye Predictive Maintenance has been around since 2014. It has been AI machine learning driven from the very start. Our whole goal is the interface is designed for your maintenance team to log in, be presented and their attention driven to the assets that need their attention, that they can then have the data-driven insights to go make the decisions that they need to. And very quickly understand what is happening with the assets without having to go get advanced training on vibration, data scientist, training or knowledge or personnel, et cetera. The second is that we look to scale. The power of predictive maintenance is really being able to look across assets, not focusing only on one certain type, for example, but being able to replicate what you do in one plant to another, even though you might have a different OEM, even though you might have a different data historian, you might have different processes, but similar equipment. So being able to take this predictive and maintenance environment and scale it across your assets and across your facilities. And then we are a cloud-based solution. And this year, the launch of generative AI that really starts to elevate predictive maintenance into that prognostic and prescriptive of being able to tell your employees a summary of the information and where to start from a maintenance perspective.
Yeah, I think it's important to say that when our product is learning from that generative AI area, it's only learning specifically from your data. We're not adding in anybody else's. It's literally your own machinery. So it's not, sharing any information with anyone else.
Definitely. It's a proprietary Siemens deployment of ChatGPT and generative AI. So it learns only on your data.
Awesome. So kind of going into some more differentiators of predictive maintenance, or Senseye Predictive Maintenance specifically.
I mentioned a couple of these, but one of the biggest differentiators is the agnostic. We are agnostic to the asset type, meaning we can do rotating equipment, non-rotating equipment. So really looking at all of the assets that are critical to your production processes. This enables us to go after robotics, variable drives, motors, pumps, a wide variety, but we're also agnostic to the data source. We're part of the Siemens family and connect very well to Siemens, PLCs and other types of systems. But as long as we can get access to the data from a data historian or other mechanism, we can use that data in Senseye. With that means we can leverage existing data that you already have. So we don't take the approach that we have to add a lot of hardware or other types of technology, edge devices or software in order to leverage the data that might already be there. So part of our work with our customers is that conversation about what do you already have available? Can we get access to it and leverage as much of that as possible to get started? Just kind of reiterating the scalability of being able to monitor, thousands of assets simultaneously. We have customers that are able to do that and hired no new maintenance staff or other types of job responsibilities like data scientists, for example. And then the last part is really that knowledge platform. We have the ability to really train our customers to become self-sufficient, of being able to add new assets over time as they look to expand their program, and really understanding how to do that with the admin capabilities within Senseye to become self-sufficient into the future.
I think it's really nice, obviously from a marketing perspective, but like teaching that we teach people how to use the new technology. We're just not handing you a new software to have to develop on your own before we walk away. So we get a lot of help getting things up and running.
And that really helps control that aspect of too expensive. If you have to constantly hire third-party, consultants and integrators and those types of, project, expenses, the project becomes maybe soon out of reach. So for those organizations that want to learn how to do it themselves and grow, we have the knowledge platform for them to be able to do so.
Awesome. So do we want to give an example to show our platform to kind of show how you don't need to be a data scientist to make it happen?
Certainly. So I, as a user, am able to log in. This is the Senseye platform. As I mentioned, it is geared towards your maintenance teams to be able to log in, navigate to their area of interest. Up here at the top is that navigation window that allows somebody maybe at the higher level within an organization to understand kind of the health location of the various plants that you might have. The windows update based on where you are within the organization. So navigating down into plant number 1, zone 1, area 1, for example, the assets that are associated with that area then become into focus. We have what we call an attention index that draws through a color-coded system your maintenance team's attention to those assets that maybe are on a watch list, that some different condition indicators are starting to trend up when they shouldn't be, for example, to more immediate need. So that color coding that you see here, it also at each section kind of tells you the highest level of the asset. When I say asset in our environment, that's typically at the pump, the motor, so that subcomponent level, but you can have it in context to a piece of equipment, an area that it's associated with. Here on the left, Senseye creates what's called a case. And that means that when we've identified through the AI analytics that a trend, an anomaly, a threshold violation has started to occur for one of your assets, we open a case that allows you to track, review, monitor, and then close out work activities for that asset. So your maintenance team clicks on one of these cases. The information in the center then updates accordingly. This case information gives you a very quick summary of which of the data streams or condition indicators for that asset is showing the trend, the anomaly, the degradation. So you might have multiple data streams for the pump, the robot, so that's your vibration, your currents, your temperatures, your flows, vibration. And so under the case details, first and foremost, the co-pilot capabilities tell your maintenance team very quickly what is happening with your asset with the supporting data graphics for your team to then start to review. We also now have possible explanations with that context and data-driven insights automatically delivered to your maintenance team. So possible explanations is the motor degradation, a process change, normal behavior, a sensor was bumped, for example. So this is actually to be ignored, for example. But the nice thing is we then, through a simple hyperlink, show you previous instances of this happening to your piece of equipment, the relative data associated with it. And then as your team gets better about really putting the knowledge of your maintenance team into a system like ours, you can go back and look at the previous history of what was done on that piece of equipment, and that becomes the starting place for your maintenance team. From there, you also have a multitude of other tools that you can access. You can look at all of the data that is associated with the asset, previous work events, previous cases that have happened, and really the history of that asset. So you can look at all of the data streams that are associated so that you can look at it within the context of the bigger picture of the asset. We also now have what is the conversational co-pilot capabilities. And this is an interface that allows your maintenance team to start asking the system questions. And the co-pilot then has the ability to search Senseye. And as we mentioned, this is specific to your data and feedback. It does not share between customers. It does not share to the open, GPT functionality that's out there. So it very quickly goes and does the research for you, returns the results back to your team, and it's conversational, meaning you can start to ask for refinement. You can ask things like, translate this to Spanish because I need to take this down and collaborate with other coworkers that maybe English is not their first language, and really have the system do the work for you. That's a very high level overview of the system, and we would be happy to, on an individual basis, dive deeper into the technology and answer any questions that you guys have.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Kelly. Going back to our presentation here, obviously we've talked about, proving your ROI. Kelly, can you give some examples of how we've proven ROI with some customers?
These are examples of some of our leading customers. What I was not able to explain is how quick that we have the ability to deploy Senseye. We take a different approach over some of our competitors that require that you go out and either generate yourself or purchase the AI models for each type of equipment. So these examples, the leading automotive manufacturer, really took that phased approach that we mentioned. They started on a smaller scale from the beginning, and now over the course of several years have over 11,000 assets that are monitored. They have plants in different time zones, different languages. And one of the big things about the automotive manufacturer is they hired no new maintenance staff to support this. They have done the shift from cost avoidance, which can be a significant ROI, but they are now have embraced a PDM culture and really starting to find ways to do cost savings. Can I improve this process and put this to being monitored in Senseye 24/7? So this is really replicable across industries. So we don't focus on necessarily just one industry, because if you think about it, a pump is a pump. It may have different materials and different specifications, but the function of a pump is the same. So we're able to go really across those industries. So these are achievable and real numbers of ROI in 3 months. Versus other companies that have gone with competitors that 9 months in and they're still struggling to get any value out of the system. These are referenceable customers for us, meaning that we can have customer hosted conversations between them and our prospects.
That's wonderful. I really like this global steelmaker producer version of it, where they say that they retrofitted the sensors versus like replacing a bunch of new equipment. And I think that's also really important, is you don't necessarily have to have a bunch of, obviously sensors are really nice for us because that's obviously how we get our data, but we can retrofit or even use the sensors that you already have on your equipment to kind of still prove that ROI without, extending that timeline by too much.
And those guys took on the challenge in the middle of COVID, no less. And they, again, are ones that started on the smaller scale because they wanted to develop what their PDM culture was going to be and kind of what those processes for, the individual plants, who's going to be doing the logging in of Senseye and review of the data and how maintenance is going to react to that information. And that takes some time for companies to be able to make that cultural shift. So they too have now expanded to thousands of assets across multiple plants, across multiple time zones, and really are collaborating across those plants for best practices.
That's awesome. So if you're kind of curious onto, how much ROI you can save, we've got our ROI calculator here. You can also learn more. We'll have a poll question to kind of lean into if you want to get contacted. Just, fill out the poll and we'll, reach out to you directly. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be open to questions now. So if you have any questions, could you share it in the chat or the questions area? To get started, what do you mean when you say getting started with kind of the data you have?
So that it goes back to doing a review of how much automation do you currently have at your facility. Do you have PLCs that are connected to your OT network that maybe you already have a data historian, so you've done that work of connecting your equipment. You're doing the work of capturing and storing that real-time data, for example. So A is the level of automation that you do currently have. And then 2 is from that automation is, do we have the right type of data? And that's where you might, for a particular type of asset, come in and do an aftermarket sensor to give us vibration, because the level of predictions that we can do are more valuable and more relevant, because that is added to the other types of data. So it's really starting with that analysis of where you are in your journey, and what can we leverage that's already there.
We mentioned that culture is like a really big portion of kind of implementing the digitalization journey or predictive maintenance in general. How do you recommend starting the culture shift?
Part of it is really finding maintenance teams that are interested in learning new technology, learning new processes, that are interested in making that shift from, I have to, do that manual route that takes me 2 hours to get done. I have to put it in to my schedule, and they want to make that shift from kind of fighting fires all the time so that they can be more effective. You also need to have project sponsors and project champions. So having somebody in the maintenance team, somebody at the plant level, somebody at the corporate level that helps support these initiatives, that gives the right backing, is very helpful in those cultural shifts.
Awesome. How do someone asked the question? How do we support the sensor or integration portion of retrofitting the legacy or analog equipment?
So Siemens has a wealth of products that are available for things like adding edge connectivity. So if you have existing technology but maybe don't have it connected yet, we have connectivity options. We have a data collective Insight Hub, for example, that could be used, that helps us do the data connectivity to Senseye. So we have an open API within Senseye that allows us to work with either of different methods of communication, but also different types of technology.
We talked a lot today about the integration with new technology or with existing systems. Someone wants to know about implementing it on new facilities. So how do we work around that?
For new facilities, it's similar actually to existing or brownfield facilities. As you can imagine, on a brand new facility, starting with a predictive maintenance program really helps you set the baseline of normal operating conditions, maybe similar to OEM specs versus a brownfield opportunity that has equipment that's 15 years old, for example. So new facilities might have more data and connected information, to start with, so you don't have to go back. If you're in the process of developing a new facility, then working with your OEMs on, the smart equipment where they have more data available as part of either that add-on option from the manufacturer, so you're not having to retrofit it, would be part of the process on that new plant versus brownfield.
How long does it take to kind of get data into Senseye from that new or even existing systems?
That one's a little bit of a hard one to answer, only in the sense of, and I kind of hate using this term, it does depend. So companies that have done the work, for example, they've implemented the OSI Pi system, or they have GE ThinkWorks, and so they've done the connection. Then Senseye would tend to take the data that already exists from that system, so it can be quicker because you're creating a connection to one system. Otherwise, you might have a hybrid connection where we are taking some data from a data historian, or we might be doing an IoT sensor through an edge device to Senseye. But in short, typically our connection is the weeks to several months, just depending on the complexity and the number of assets that we're onboarding.
Thank you so much. If your questions were answered today, we will be following up in an email to make sure that your questions are answered. So look, into that as we finish up today. But thank you so much for joining, and thank you, Kelly, for all of your insights. Really appreciate it. Go ahead.
And thank you, everyone, for your time and attention, and hope you found value.
We'll see you next time. Thank you.